The Louvre Museum, one of the world's largest and greatest museums, is located on the right bank of the Seine River in the first arrondissement of Paris. The museum is housed in the iconic French palace, the Louvre Palace, surrounded by a vast complex of wings and pavilions. In French royal architecture, wings are large structures above the ground to form a courtyard. The protruding sections at the corners and the centers of each side of the wing are known as pavilions. Wings and the pavilions are adorned with abundant architectural structures and reliefs representing important historic and allegorical figures in Western history. Two statues called Rhonomes, which are mythological winged female figures symbolizing fame, were put in place in 1638 on the pediment of the pavilion. Inspired by the caryatids featuring in Greek temples, a set of caryatids were built into the facade of the pavilion in 1640. In ancient Greek architecture, caryatids were used for centuries as architectural supports instead of columns or pillars, and are always depicted as ornate female figures. A bas-relief depicting Moses holding the Ten Commandments was sculpted in 1806 on orders of Napoleon Bonaparte. The colonnade under the pavilion is a sequence of columns joined by the entablature. The space between the colonnade is a passageway, which invites visitors to enter the main court. The Louvre Museum, the world's most visited museum and a cultural and historic landmark in Paris, covers a massive area of 652,000 square feet. It's home to some of the best-known works of art, including Mona Lisa and the Venus de Milo. This is the room of Mona Lisa. There are at least 500 people in this room. Walking through the passage in the Richelieu wing from Rue de Rivoli, passing through the colonnade under the pavilion, you will arrive at the Court Napoleon, the main courtyard in the Louvre Palace, where the Louvre Museum is situated. Over the course of several centuries, the palace was built, modified, destroyed, and reconstructed under different French monarchs. Its apparent stylistic consistency is largely due to conscious efforts of architects over several centuries to echo each other's work and preserve a strong sense of historical continuity, mirroring that of the French monarchy and the state. Before becoming one of the world's largest and greatest museums, the fate of the Louvre was closely tied to the history of France and Paris. Built between 1190 and 1202 under the reign of French King Philip Auguste, the Louvre was initially a fortress to defend the capital city before it was transformed for royal occupation, and then expanded into a sprawling palace, which was both a seat of political power and a residence of artists. During the French Revolution, the National Assembly decreed that the Louvre should be used as a museum to display the nation's masterpieces. In 1793, the Louvre opened to public as a museum. Over a period of 800 years, the Louvre Palace has gradually evolved from a medieval fortress to the museum of today, This transformation from fortress to palace to museum, from one great building project to the next, is a part of a rich French history that is still being written today. The Louvre is a universal museum with 8 curatorial departments: Egyptian antiquities, Near Eastern antiquities, Greek, Etruscan, and Roman antiquities, paintings, sculptures, decorative arts, prints and drawings, and Islamic art. Some 35,000 works of art are on display in an area of 800,000 square feet, spread over 3 wings of the former palace, including world-famous masterpieces such as the Winged Victory of Samothrace, Mona Lisa, and Venus de Milo. Parts of the palace, such as the Gallery of Apollo and the Napoleon III apartments, are works of art in their own right. Featuring sumptuous wall decorations and splendid ceiling paintings, the Gallery of Apollo is a large and iconic palatial hall in the Louvre. It was initially built for the display of art by King Henry IV in the 16th century during his reign, but it was destroyed in a fire in 1661. The current setup of the gallery was constructed by Louis XIV after the fire in 1660s. It's home to the most precious royal collection of hardstone vessels and the French crown jewels. Artistically, culturally, and historically significant, the gallery is a stunning display of the extravagant lives of the French monarchy, luxurious spectacle of the French court, and artistic creativity of the era. Lying on the upper floor of a wing, known as the Petite Gallery in the Louvre, the gallery is a tourist destination as well as a cultural icon in its own right. As a part of the Louvre, the Gallery of Apollo is listed as a National Heritage Site as well as UNESCO World Heritage Site for its artistic, cultural, and historic significance. King Louis XIV famously identified himself with the sun god Apollo. This magnificent gallery was the first tangible representation of that image. To create this masterpiece of architectural decoration, he summoned France's greatest painters, gilders, and sculptors of the day, who later worked on the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles. There's the crown of Louis XV of France on the display. It was used at his coronation in 1722 and was embellished with diamonds and precious stones from the royal collection. Up to the 19th century, it was the only crown surviving the tumultuous French Revolution, in which most French crowns were destroyed. Psyche Revived by Cupid's Kiss is a sculpture by Italian artist Antonio Canova. It is regarded as a masterpiece of neoclassical sculpture, showing the mythological lovers at a moment of great emotion, characteristic of the emerging movement of Romanticism. It represents the god Cupid in the height of love and tenderness, immediately after awakening the lifeless Psyche with a kiss. The story of Cupid and Psyche is taken from an ancient Roman novel in 2nd AD and was popular in art. Psyche is a Greek goddess known for her extraordinary beauty. She is commonly referred to the goddess of the soul. Cupid, the son of the love goddess Venus and the god of war Mars, is the god of desire, erotic love, attraction, and affection. The tale concerns the overcoming of obstacles to the love between Psyche and Cupid and their ultimate union in a sacred marriage. Psyche and Cupid had a daughter named Hedone, goddess of physical pleasure. It is also the root of the English word hedonism. Aphrodite is an ancient goddess of love and beauty. During the Roman period, she was known as Venus. She is said to have power to provoke desire. Aphrodite was widely worshipped in Western history and culture. Besides being a symbol of beauty and love, she was also honored as a goddess of seafaring, war, and fertility. Numerous Aphrodite statues of different types are exhibited in the Louvre. Aphrodite of the Capitoline depicts the famous image of the goddess after her bath. It features exuberant hairstyle and the modest gesture the goddess makes as she is surprised while performing her ablutions and uses her hands to cover her body. This Venus added the goddess of love's attributes, a mirror and an apple, references to her victory in the judgment of Paris, a story from Greek mythology in which Aphrodite influenced the Paris of Troy to marry Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, and it led to the Trojan War. Female torso of the Aphrodite of Cnidos type was sculpted by the Athenian artist Praxiteles around 370 to 330 BC. It is said to be the first Greek statue of a female nude. The Venus de Milo is an ancient Greek sculpture which was created during the Hellenistic period, sometime between 150 and 125 BC. It is believed to be sculpted by the Greek sculptor Alexandros of Antioch between 130 and 100 BC. The Venus de Milo is larger than life size, standing 6 feet 8 inches high. The statue is famously missing both arms, depicted half-clothed with a bare torso. The statue originally would have had 2 arms. Upon its discovery on the island of Milos of Greece in 1820, the Venus de Milo was considered to be a significant artistic finding, and has since become an international cultural icon. The statue was considered by many artists as an epitome of graceful female beauty. The winged victory of Samothrace is a statue representing the goddess of Nike, a symbol of victory, whose head and arms are missing, and its base a warship. This breathtaking and inspiring monument was found on the island of Samothrace, north of the Aegean Sea, in 1863. Dated 200 to 190 BCE, the winged victory of Samothrace is a masterpiece and a rare surviving work of the original Greek sculpture, rather than Roman copies from the Hellenistic era, a period when ancient Greece reached its peak in art and culture. Leaning on her right leg, the goddess advances against the wind on the sea, which are metaphors of struggles. One of the most celebrated sculptures in Western history, the symbolic force of the statue is immense. The goddess of victory is often used to symbolize destiny, grace, divine help, and a triumph over adversity. The Great Sphinx of Tanis is a granite sculpture of a sphinx, whose date may be as early as the 26th century BC. This is one of the largest sphinxes outside of Egypt. It was discovered in 1825 in the ruins of the temple of Amun-Ra in Tanis, Egypt's capital during the 21st dynasty. The Louvre's painting collection is one of the richest in the world, representing all periods of European art up to the revolutions of 1848. It contains more than 7,500 works. Nearly two-thirds are by French artists, and more than 1,200 are Northern European. The Louvre's collection of French paintings from the 15th to 19th century is unsurpassed in the world, and it also has many masterpieces by Italian Renaissance painters, including works by masters such as Raphael, Michelangelo, and Leonardo da Vinci, and works by Flemish and Dutch painters of the Baroque period. Liberty Leading the People is a painting by Eugene Delacroix, commemorating the July Revolution of 1830. It depicts a bare-breasted and a barefoot woman who represents the concept of liberty, leads a group of people forward over a barricade and the bodies of the fallen, holding the flag of the French Revolution. The painting has been a worldwide symbol of rebellion against tyranny, and a vivid illustration of people's right of revolution. Since 1988, the Louvre Pyramid in the middle of the main courtyard, known as Napoleon Courtyard, has marked the center of the Louvre. The Louvre Pyramid is a large glass and steel structure designed by the Chinese-American architect Yeo Ming-pei, who was the first foreign architect working on the Louvre. At its base, the pyramid measures 116 feet wide and 70 feet high. 95 tons of steel and 105 tons of aluminum support the structure. The Louvre Pyramid serves the primary entrance to the Louvre, located in its courtyard. It was built in honor of the Egyptian pharaoh Khufu, who was the second pharaoh of the 4th dynasty of Egypt, and a constant reminder of the Egyptian antiquity collections and their significance within the museum. When the Louvre Pyramid was first constructed in 1988, it wasn't accepted by the French public. Many criticized the pyramid to be inconsistent with the classic French Renaissance style and history of the Louvre. Today, the Louvre Pyramid is admired by visitors and Parisians alike, has been the most recognizable symbol of the Louvre, and it's standing to connect the past, present, and the future of the world's greatest works of art. In our world, for centuries, the Louvre, the world's largest art museum and one of the world's most awe-inspiring museums, is synonymous with masterpieces, representing the greatest and the most legendary works of art by mankind. Once a royal palace, the Louvre bears witness to 8 centuries of French history. From the time of its founding in 1793, the museum was intended to be universal. Its collections, among the finest in the world, span several thousand years, and an area stretching from America to the confines of Asia. Even if you wander aimlessly through its labyrinth of galleries, you will stumble on spectacular masterpieces from the east to the west, which demand your attention and leave their mark on your feelings and memory for a very long period of time. When you visit the Louvre, not only will you discover what is now one of the world's largest universal museums, but also what was once the fortified castle that protected Paris, the French royal palace, and artist residence, the first public museum during the French Revolution, and a theater of Napoleonic ambition. I visited the Louvre Museum in the summer of 2022. I was immensely amazed by the artworks that I saw, including paintings and sculptures. I came home, did some research, and learned more about them. In the next few episodes, we're going to look at some of the extraordinary artworks in the Louvre, their artistic styles, techniques, inspirations, historic significance, and what makes them the masterpieces of the world for centuries. The Louvre collection has an impressive 5,500 paintings. Some of the stunning paintings on display are the creations of masters such as Michelangelo, Raphael, and Leonardo da Vinci. Most of the paintings displayed in the Louvre were created between the 13th and the 19th centuries. The world's most iconic painting, Mona Lisa, is displayed in the Louvre's largest room, Salle des Têtes. Mona Lisa's famously enigmatic smile has fascinated the world for centuries. Among her first admirers was King Francois I, who invited Leonardo da Vinci to France and bought the painting from him in 1518. This is how the world's most famous painting entered the French royal collections that have been shown at the Louvre since the French Revolution. Since 2005, the Mona Lisa has been exhibited in a protective glass case in solitary splendor in the center of the room. This special treatment stems partly from the need to ensure the safety of such a famous work, but is also due to conservation requirements. The work was not painted on canvas, but on a panel of poplar wood, which has warped over the years, causing a crack to appear. To prevent further damage, the Mona Lisa has to be kept in a temperature and humidity-controlled glass case. This is the room of Mona Lisa. There are at least 500 people in this room. The sitter for this portrait was Lisa Gherardini, who lived in Florence in the early 16th century. She was the wife of Francisco del Giocondo, a wealthy silk merchant. Her elegant, elaborate outfit indicates her social status. Her dress is covered by a large veil of transparent silk. She is sitting in a loggia, a roofed open gallery, in front of a mountainous landscape. Leonardo da Vinci used a painting technique called the sfumato. He applied multiple layers of pigments bound in oil to create a subtle transition from shadow to light, bring his model's gentle smile to life. A path on the left draws our gaze to mountains bordered by lakes. This wild, majestic landscape suggests the slow formation of the earth, the battle of the elements, and the erosion caused by time. Leonardo mastered so-called atmospheric perspective, using different shades of blue to blur the outlines and give the scene a striking depth. Leonardo aimed to bring his portrait to life by depicting Lisa as if she were naturally turning to welcome us. Her upper body is in three-quarter view, but her gently smiling face is frontal. Leonardo da Vinci never finished the Mona Lisa. The lower part of the landscape is evidently incomplete. The forms are barely sketched. Leonardo began this partially experimental painting in about 1503 and never finished it. He took it with him everywhere he went, until his final trip to France in 1516 at the invitation of King Francois I. The king bought the painting, which thus entered the French royal collections that have been shown at the Louvre since the French Revolution. The Intervention of the Sabine Woman was painted by the preeminent French neoclassical painter Jacques-Louis David in 1799. It shows the legendary episode following the abduction of the Sabine woman by the Roman soldiers in early Roman history. In 8th century BCE, shortly after Rome was founded, the first king Romulus realized there was a shortage of women population in the city. He led his army to the neighboring region to abduct women, rape them, and make them wives of the Roman men. The people living in the neighboring region was known as the Sabines. This incident, known as the abduction of the Sabine woman or the rape of the Sabine woman, was frequently depicted in the art in the Western history. After Romulus succeeded in his plan by capturing many Sabine women and making them wives of his soldiers, the Sabines waged a war against the Romans. In one battle, a Sabine woman named Hasilia rushed to stand between the two armies, placing her babies on the ground. She was the daughter of the Sabine leader Titus Tatius, abducted by Romulus himself and became his wife. Her Roman husband Romulus was standing on the right, preparing to strike his spear towards his Sabine father, who was standing on the left, holding a sword and a shield. The battle stopped and the war came to the end due to Hasilia's intervention. The Romans and Sabines eventually agreed to unite as one nation, which would be jointly ruled by Romulus and Titus Tatius. David's artistic depiction of the powerful image of Hecilia and a dramatic historical event made this painting one of the most famous artworks in the Louvre. It was created during the French Revolution. It is said to have been painted to honor David's wife, with the theme being love prevailing over conflict. The painting was also seen as a plea for the people to reunite after the bloodshed of the revolution. The soul breaking the bonds that attach it to the earth is hanging prominently on the red wall of the Denon wing of the Louvre. It was painted by the French Romantic painter Pierre-Paul Prudhon between 1821 and 1823. This painting is one of the last and the largest of the painter whose end of life was marked by a series of misfortunes, especially the suicide of his longtime collaborator and companion Constance Meyer, who slit her throat with the painter's razor after an argument. Consumed by grief, Prudhon created this masterpiece 2 years before his own death. Considered as one of the major milestones in Prudhon's career, it was classified as a national treasure in May 2018. In this painting, the female nude symbolizes death as the victory of the soul, leaving the earth for heaven. A dark and a stormy sea breaks against the rock. A lovely angelic figure illuminated as she ascends upward from these dark shores, stretching her arms up to her celestial home. She frees herself from its earthly envelope, battered by the stormy waves, where the serpent of envy crawls. The soul rises longingly skyward, a glimmer of hope in her eyes tinged with the bitter memories of its suffering, and finally joins the light of immortality. The artworks of the Louvre encompasses a diverse range of styles of Western arts, with a span of thousands of years. Among them, there are Greek and Roman art, Byzantine and medieval art, Renaissance art, Baroque art, Rococo, Neoclassicism, Romanticism. Diverse as the European continent is, the artistic traditions of its nations share many common traits. The origins of most European arts lie in the artistic production of ancient Greece and Rome. These bases were developed and spread throughout the continent with the advent of Christianity. In the late 15th century, European artistic styles began to spread to the New World, creating American and Canadian traditions that were intertwined with those of Europe. Western arts demonstrate to the world in the forms of architecture, music, dance, painting, sculpture, theater, and literature. The Louvre houses one of the largest collections of Western arts. Pygmalion and Galatea was painted by the French painter Anne-Louis Girard Tristan, who was a pupil of Jacquin Louis David in 1819. Pygmalion and Galatea is a story from Greek mythology. Pygmalion was a talented Greek sculptor from Cyprus. After becoming disgusted by the local prostitutes, he created a beautiful female nude statue out of ivory named Galatea, whom he later fell in love with. The goddess of love, Aphrodite, learned about Pygmalion's love and passion towards the statue, and was touched. Aphrodite granted his wish by bringing the statue to life. Pygmalion and Galatea got married and had a daughter. Girardet's painting style was considered as Romanticism, featuring free expression of feelings and emotions, and including the elements of eroticism. Athena is an ancient Greek goddess associated with wisdom, warfare, and handicraft. She was regarded as the patron and the protectress of various cities across Greece, particularly the city of Athens, from which she most likely received her name. This statue of Athena is one of several colossal antique replicas of a famous Athenian sculpture. The discovery at Bay, near Naples, of fragments of antique plaster models made from the original work indicates that this sculpture would have been a bronze of the same dimensions. It is attributed to the sculptor Crassus around 430 BC. Susanna and the Elders was painted by the Dominican-born French Romantic painter Theodore Chassereau. The painting is based on an Old Testament story of the Bible, in which Susanna, a fair Hebrew wife, was bathing, unaware of the two old men who were watching her lustfully. The two old men would conspire to blackmail her for sex by threatening to falsely accuse her of committing adultery with a young man, which was punishable by death. In this painting, the sensuality of her nude figure, like that of a classical statue of Venus, is heightened by the touch of the veil and the light of dusk. The eroticism of the image is tempered by a shadowy sense of melancholy. Susanna and the Elders was a frequent subject in paintings by many male artists in the West since 15th century, when nudes became a fashion in art. They exemplify the appeal to male artists and patrons of a portrayal of a naked woman watched by sexually aroused men. In practice, it allowed artists the opportunity to display their skill in the depiction of the female nude, often for the voyeuristic pleasure of their male patrons. Leonidas and Thermopylae was painted by the French neoclassical painter Jacques-Louis David shortly after the French Revolution. David spent 15 years working on this massive painting from 1799 to 1814. It depicts a Spartan king, Leonidas, in a theatrical scene in the Battle of Thermopylae. This epic battle between Greece and the Persian Empire took place in 480 BC in Thermopylae, a mountainous region in ancient Greece, where the Spartan king Leonidas, whose soldiers were outnumbered, fought the invading Persian army by sacrificing himself and his men to give the Greeks the time they needed to organize an ultimately victorious resistance. This act of bravery and sacrifice by King Leonidas and his 300 soldiers inspired David as France waged its own campaigns against the rival European powers that wanted to restore France's pre-revolutionary monarchy. Cupid and Psyche standing was sculpted by the Italian Romantic sculptor Antonio Canova in 1796. Psyche places a butterfly, a symbol of the soul, in the palm of Cupid's hand. Canova reinvented the classical model of them by creating intimacy between the two figures. This standing group was seen as the embodiment of innocence, forming a pair with the group of Cupid with the reclining Psyche, symbolizing voluptuousness. The young Psyche, whose name in Greek means soul, holds Cupid's hand as he leans his head on her shoulder. The skillful, elegant play between their arms and hands leads the eye to the butterfly. The quality of the marble and the delicate sensuality of the surfaces make this work one of Canova's masterpieces. The two slaves were sculpted by Michelangelo in 1513. They were initially intended to serve as a part of the grandiose funerary monument of Pope Julius II, who died in 1513. But due to the cost concerns, the project was largely reduced by the Pope's successors. The statues changed hands over the centuries until they arrived in the Louvre in 1794 during the French Revolution. One of the statues is referred to as the rebellious slave, who is portrayed trying to free himself from the fetters which hold his hands behind his back, contorting his torso and twisting his head. The impression given, which would have contributed to the spatial appearance of the monument, was that he was moving towards the viewer with his raised shoulder and knee. The symbolic and philosophical meanings of the statue was linked to Michelangelo's personal life and his torments. Roger freeing Angelica is an 1819 painting by Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres. It was inspired by an 16th century epic poem by Ariosto. In the poem, Roger, a knight whose steed is a hippogriff, a legendary creature, half horse and half eagle. While riding near the coast of Brittany, a historical province of France, Roger sees a beautiful woman, Angelica, chained to a rock on the Isle of Tears. She has been abducted and stripped naked by barbarians who have left her there as a human sacrifice to a sea monster. As Roger rides to her aid, a great thrashing in the water occurs. It is the monster approaching Angelica. Roger drives his lance between the monster's eyes and rescues Angelica. To convey the supernatural nature of this Renaissance tale of chivalry, Ingres used an original combination of the styles of 15th and 16th century Italian and Flemish painters. The two strongly sexualized figures are illuminated against the darkness of the night. Bust of Rome. On either side of the helmet, a she-wolf circles Romulus and Remus, the twin brothers who were born to Rhea Silvia by the god of Mars by rape, founded the city of Rome. The legend has it, Romulus murdered Remus and became the first king of Rome. Diana, goddess of the hunt, is recognizable by the crescent moon on her forehead. This bust, made by a pupil and the son-in-law of Genovese sculptor Filippo Parodi, is, thanks to its theatrical quality, typical of Baroque sculpture from Genoa. The Zodiac Woman was painted by the Dutch-French Romantic painter Ary Scheffer in 1827. This painting is a vivid depiction of a heartbroken scene, in which the woman in the village of Zalongo in Greece committed mass suicide during the invasion of Ottoman Empire in 1803. 60 women, being chased by the Ottoman troops, decided to plunge from the cliff to die with their infants and children, rather than being captured, raped, and enslaved. They performed the singing and the dancing according to the Greek tradition before their suicide jump, one after another. The Three Graces is a neoclassical sculpture sculpted by the Genevan-born French neoclassical sculptor James Pradier in 1831. It depicts three ancient Greek goddesses who were daughters of Zeus, Euphrosyne, Elegia, and Thalia, who represent beauty, charm, and joy. The Three Graces presided over banquets and gatherings to delight the guests of gods. The Veiled Woman was sculpted by the Italian Rococo sculptor Antonio Corradini in 1777. Corradini is best known for his illusory veiled depictions of human body where the contours of the face and the bodies beneath the veil are discernible. Venus and Cupid is a 1554 painting by Lambert Sustris, a Dutch artist active in Venice who served as a studio assistant to Titian and drew on his master's use of color. In this painting, Cupid watches Venus as she strokes doves while waiting for her lover, Mars, approaching in the background. This colossal work is a posthumous portrait of Antinous, made between 130 and 138 AD, and was rediscovered in the early 18th century near the ruined Roman city Tuscan. It was sold to Napoleon Bonaparte in 1807. Antinous was born in 111 AD. The early life of him was unclear. He was known for his good looks. Antinous met the Roman Emperor Hadrian in 123 AD at the age 12, and they became lovers. Antinous is a symbol of male homosexuality in Western culture. Time lifting up virtue and the arts. The male winged figure of Time is about to lift up and crown a nude female figure surrounded by three little angels, holding the attributes of the arts: sculpture, architecture, and painting. The sculpted group was acquired in Genoa in Italy in 1699. This concludes my feature presentation on the Louvre Museum. It has been 7 months since we were visiting Paris and London in the summer of 2022. We visited churches, palaces, gardens, museums, and universities. We walked the streets in Paris and London. A wonderful, immersive travel experience of the two large capital cities in Europe. The United Kingdom and France, which have emerged as global powers since the medieval ages, set to become the world-shaping nations with glorious history and culture. I made this video series because I feel the experience needs to be preserved and shared, and the stories need to be told to my friends and children. What I saw and what I learned in this trip solidify my belief that together these two nations represent the epitome of Western civilization in modern times, and with the historic riches and cultural heritage, they are among the most desirable tourist destinations in the world.